Shabbat Shalom. I hope you're doing well in these difficult, challenging times, but I hope we're all able to find a bit of peace this Shabbat. We'll read this week about one of the great love stories in our tradition, the story of Jacob and Rachel and Rachel, and how he fought to be with Rachel, to marry Rachel, and went to extraordinary lengths, including working for years and years. And the Torah presents us with a very puzzling verse. As the verse says in chapter 29, verse 20, it says, Vayavod Yaakov berachel sheva shanim, that Jacob worked for 7 years for his father-in-law Lavan, to have Rachel's hand in marriage for 7 years. V'yu beinav ki yamim achadim ba'avato ota. And that these 7 years were just like a few days. Because of his love for her, the meaning of the verse is that they pass by just like a few days. But it's a puzzling verse because that's not the way love works. That's not the way that time works. That if Yaakov is working for his wife Rachel for 7 years, that must drag on and on and on, not passing by as if it was just a single day. Time doesn't fly when you're in love and can't be with the one that you love. And so how can it be that the Torah describes those 7 years like yamim achadim, like a single day or like single days? One interpretation, which was offered by Rabbi Abraham J. Twersky, Rabbi Doctor, one of the extraordinary leaders and teachers of our generation, who passed away just a few years ago, he offered the explanation that when it came to recovery, because he dealt with addiction issues, that was his professional field, and he wrote that when it comes to addiction and when it comes to people who are in AA or battling any type of addiction, that the key was to take it one day at a time. That there are certain tasks that are just too great to take on in a larger sense, and the only way to approach them is to say, well, I'm going to get through today. That's the most important thing. I'm going to get through this moment. And it's okay sometimes to live in the moment. And this was his interpretation of what Jacob did, to say, I'm going to have to work for 7 years. That's an impossible task. Who can wait that long? But I have to get through today. And after today, I'll figure out what I'm going to do tomorrow. Well, that's something that's a little bit more feasible. That's a little bit more realistic. Sometimes we have to live in the moment. It's what life demands of us. We like to keep the broader picture. We like to make sure that our goals and our ambitions, that we hold on to that we never lose sight of the big picture, as they say. But sometimes you have to live in the moment. We're right now in a time of extraordinary challenge, extraordinary difficulty, extraordinary stress and anxiety, and everything that comes along with the matzav, the situation in Israel. And Israel in these past weeks has been asked to contemplate the most difficult of realities, of achieving their ambition of getting the hostages out, while at the same time pausing the fighting, which is in one sense unconscionable. How can you pause fighting a terrorist entity that will use a pause to rearm itself to battle you and to battle the world, and to release the hostages in order for the hostages to be released by Hamas? For some of the hostages, that Israel would have to release violent prisoners, Palestinian prisoners, people who were convicted for such crimes such as attempted murder, such as complicity in terror acts, and to release them, to get children home in some cases to their parents, and in some cases there are no parents surviving who survived the massacres of Simchat Torah of October 7th. How do you make that deal? How do we leave prisoners? How do we leave hostages behind? How do we sit at a table, a proverbial table, with those who are bent on our destruction? How is a deal like this made? It's It's difficult to comprehend. It's difficult to embrace. It's difficult to justify. On the other hand, every life is worth turning over an entire world to save. Every life is valuable, and if there's an opportunity to get even one precious Israeli hostage or hostage from Israel, they weren't all Israelis, but if there's any chance to save those people from the hands of the terrorists and to return them to their land, then we have to do that. Sometimes we have to suspend the big picture in order to achieve the immediate goal. It's okay to hold competing emotions at the same time. It's okay to be distraught that Israel has to embrace, because of world pressure, because of whatever factors are there, has to embrace and engage in a ceasefire, when we know Hamas won't respect a ceasefire. They never have. They're a terrorist entity. Why would they? How could they? And at the same time, knowing that really this is a failure of the world, and the world should be demanding the release of every single hostage from Hamas. They should say, we won't engage in any conversations, we won't engage in any justifications, we won't engage in anything that the world has been engaging in until the hostages are released, until the innocents are brought back to their homes. But the world hasn't said that. The world has been conspicuously absent on that matter and on so much else. So we're in a situation that no one wants to be in. And I don't envy the decision makers who had to approve the decision to exchange innocent hostages for violent prisoners. It's not an exchange. There's nothing that should imply equality or exchange of that. They're two very separate acts. And they're both the result of terrorists, and they're both capitulating in some way to terror, and it's painful. But sometimes we have to put the blinders on and focus. Ki amim achadim. We just have to get through today. If we have a chance to get even one hostage home, we're going to get them home. If we have a chance to make one life better, then we have to do that. The big picture, at least for this moment, is going to have to wait for tomorrow, or will have to be put on the back burner at the very least as these decisions are made. They are impossible decisions, an impossible situation. But if Yaakov's life can inspire us in any way, if our Parsha can inspire us in any way, it's that getting through the difficult moments. Sometimes the trick is not thinking of the big problem, but getting through this moment, this minute, this hour, this day. Ki yamim achadim. And then hopefully we look back after many years, as Yaakov did, or look back after a period of time and say, okay, I succeeded by taking it one day, one moment, one decision at a time. Wishing you a Shabbat Shalom, and praying that we hear, in Hebrew we say Besorot Tovot, which means good tidings, that we hear good news from Israel, from the Jewish people, and really for the world. Shabbat Shalom.